Welcome to the Marketing Leaders Circle sales and marketing event, creating a harmonious working relationship. I'm Neil Maycock. I'm CMO at Grass Valley, looking after our marketing activities and also our delivery and service organization. And I'm an advisory board member for MLC. I think we've got an interesting topic and we've got a great panel today. So I'll just do some quick introductions and then we can kick things off. So introducing the panel, first of all, we have Alison, who's Director of Sales and Marketing at Pebble. I'm going to shamelessly read some extracts from people's bios here, so I apologize if it's stilted wooden reading. But so Alison has several overall responsibility for the company's global sales and marketing function and is a long-standing figure in the industry. She's a board member of the IBM and sits on the exhibition committee of IBC. Next, Anneli, who's managing director at Sandler UK. Anneli is a dynamic, enthusiastic speaker who informs, entertains, and motivates business owners, managing directors, senior managers, and sales professionals. Finally, we have Tom, who's Chief Commercial Officer at Disguise. Tom leads the global commercial team at Disguise, responsible for driving growth while ensuring customer remains top of mind. So I think that's a fantastic mix of people for this discussion. So I want to kick things off by passing things to Alison. So Alison, you're the only one of us with sales and marketing in your job title. So I'm sure you can confirm from the outset that it's always harmonious and there's never a problem, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, actually, you know, the sales and marketing teams do work really closely together. I used to head up marketing and now, you know, took on responsibility for both, having had many years of experience in sales in past lives, really. And actually, I think that having responsibility for both teams enables us to be one team and enables the guys and the girls to really understand each other's priorities and pressures, and they do work well together. You know, we have joint co-working days. You may know that we're a remote-only organisation, so we all are working, you know, all around the world doing our particular roles. But we do have joint co-working days where everybody gets to sort of share what they're working on, to sort of foster a greater sense of team and understanding. And we have regular marketing input into our weekly sales meetings so that we can keep those lines of communication really open. And actually, one of the things that I did for the team at the start of the year is created a role of sales and marketing coordinator. And that person is responsible for sort of really is the thread that follows the lead right the way through to the point of order. And that helps, you know, right from the point of first contact right through to order. That really helps unite the teams as well. And that has to be the kind of person who can get the results that they need to, who actually has good lines of communication right across the team. But it definitely helps unite the two as well, I feel. So honestly, you know, which team ever gets on brilliantly 100% all the time? They're really good, honestly. You know, we do have a real laugh together. And actually, I think that's part of most of the battle in a way, isn't it?
Excellent, yeah. And then I think, Tom, you when we were talking before, you said, Disguise, you guys have actually done some work to bring the teams together. So I don't know if you want to touch on the before and after at all.
Yeah, very similar to Alison actually, and so I'm sort of the opposite of Alison. I've always had a sales background and sales career, and I'm now Chief Commercial Officer, so looking after sales and marketing combined. And both teams used to sit under sort of different heads, and I think what we tried to do over the last 18 months is fuse the two a little, and it's been a process because, you know, historically and organizations I've always worked for, and I'm sure many people on the, you know, in the webinar have as well, is that, you know, marketing generate leads in a silo, they throw them over a fence, sales catches them, doesn't like them for whatever reason, doesn't pass that feedback loop, you know, drops them, complains, and you end up wasting a whole load of time and money on, you know, generating leads that don't really go anywhere and generating demand that doesn't really materialize. So it's been a process, but I think, you know, it's three things really. First is, you know, breaking down the barrier. So I think exactly as Alison was saying, like, get the teams to sit together, work together, like understand what each other do, go out together, organize social events as well as having them sitting in amongst each other in the office. That part of breaking down the barrier also really depends on strong leadership in each piece. I like the idea of a sales and marketing coordinator bringing the thread together. I think that's something that we could adopt as well. What's worked for us is having a really excellent marketing director and a really excellent global VP of sales who can work together, understand that they're two halves of the same coin, and really sort of lead the charge and set the tone for the rest of the team. So breaking down those barriers and making sure that you have, you can kind of at least set that alignment. The next bit is to create that alignment. So setting joint KPIs. So the marketing team is, KPI'd on revenue. The sales team is KPI'd on conversion of leads and turnaround times and the feedback loop that they provide back again. We also have our BDRs, so our inside sales team, our kind of junior salespeople who are often the first people that pick up the phone, the first human that someone speaks to. Their line managers are in sales, but the marketing team actually drives their initiatives, drives their weekly meetings, and actually almost sort of sets a bit of a leadership pattern for that team. So they very much drive that team forward in their activities, which gives a feeling of sort of one hand and the other hand. That point where sort of marketing and sales connect, we literally have the marketing team driving that part of the sales organization. And the third part is just supercharging it, making sure that we celebrate every success. We get the marketing team presenting at sales meetings, sales team presenting their successes back to the marketing team, joint Slack channels, calling each other out, that sort of thing. So it starts with like just getting that understanding, breaking down those barriers, setting some joint KPIs, alignment initiatives, and then just watching it grow. Obviously, it's way more complicated and complex than that, especially when there's lots of people involved. But that's been the general path.
You're smiling at that point. I like that. Yeah. So there's some points definitely to come back to from both of you there, but I'd just like to bring in Anneli, because you work with a lot of organizations, and just how typical of what we've just heard is in your experience. Is it typical?
Oh, most definitely. And I think I want to just slightly expand on what we've heard from both the previous panelists there. And I think you need to sort of start by thinking about how both teams are rewarded. The marketing team are rewarded on the number of leads they typically manage to create, which is brilliant. And then the sales team are rewarded on those that they close. And then the disconnect comes because, as we just heard there, marketing lob it over the fence, sales take a look at them and go, oh, these aren't worth it. These aren't good enough. This is just someone that's downloaded a white paper once, and marketing go, but that was a lead, and sales go, it's not qualified. I've been in this position for 10 years. I don't have time to follow up that. It's not warm. And it's down to what they're rewarded on. So, we actually heard some great tips already, and I was just going to expand on those, is that the things that we need to look at is then getting everyone to work together so we all have a really clearly defined ideal client or a number of personas that we're reaching out to, so that everybody knows, and it's, we can go, this is a tier 1 or this is a tier 3 or however we classify them in our companies. But then the handover, and this is where we spend a lot of time working with teams, is what is that handover? How do marketing pass it over? And what is the expectation of sales? Because we just heard that, if you've got an inside sales team, some BDRs who can pick up the phone and are expected to call them within a day or contact them by email or whatever that is, there just needs to be a clear handover chain so people know. Because I always think marketing will work so hard to get these leads, and what salespeople don't understand is they're a bit like bananas. Like, they go off, like they might have been nice and like ready to eat, but by the time they get round to it 3 weeks later, they're brown and no one wants this anymore. And it was a timepiece, and therefore the handover. But then we heard as well the feedback loop. How do we go back and go, yes, that was good because of ABC, that didn't work for us because of these, and not get into the blame, because salespeople could then go, oh, that wasn't good, it wasn't qualified, and marketing can quite justifiably get defensive and go, well, that's exactly the target. And actually it's about expanding their vocabulary on the feedback. It's not, I didn't do a good job, you didn't do a good job. It's, why didn't this one work right now? And making everybody see that actually we all own this client, we're all working towards the company's goals, and we just need to be clear on how we can continually improve that. Because sales wouldn't be as successful without marketing, and marketing wouldn't have anything to do if sales weren't there to close it. So we are on the same team, but so often we like to pretend not.
Well, that's a perfect segue to something I wanted to go back with Alison. So I think commented this sales and marketing coordinator. I assume you hired them from the diplomatic service to be effective, right?
She's listening in the next room, so I really hope that she's appreciating that. We hired her internally, actually. So she, so we wanted somebody. She was very keen to join the team, firstly, which is fantastic, and secondly, she makes it happen, and that's really what you need, is somebody who just doesn't let things drop, who can pick things up, make sure that things move, that things progress at a pace, and that there's a gentle nudge or quite an aggressive nudge, depending on who you're talking to make sure that things just keep moving forward, because everybody's got a lot to do, and it's just keeping an eye on making sure that that goal that you had, or that trip that you wanted to plan, or that campaign, or whatever it is actually happening. So I think I would say a good organizer and somebody who doesn't take any crap from anybody is actually a really good role to have. It's not so much somebody in the diplomatic corps, it's more
somebody that doesn't take any crap. I like that. Excellent.
One of the things I was going to add, though, really, about linking sales and marketing, that just occurred to me while you were talking, Tom, was that I think that having, in your role as in mine, having overall responsibility helps keep both teams kind of honest and accountable to one another, because you can't have either, yes, we've lobbed a lead over to you, what are you going to do with it? And what you also can't have is, we've generated this collateral, why aren't you using it? Or we've organized this event, why did you not make it a success? Because we are all we all have to be answerable to one another about these things, and it helps keep, certainly for me, from moving to being head of marketing to doing this, has made me realize that it's not enough just to say, I've written this press release, I've organized this event, I've given you this lead. You do need that person that's going to keep the thread going right the way through, and not just say, right, okay, off you go. What did you do with it? It's all part of the same story. We're all on the same side. So I think it just helps unify that approach, really.
Absolutely. So maybe I should comment, as an organization that doesn't have joined up ownership of sales and marketing, and I think I like what you were saying, Tom, about alignment on KPIs and how the teams are incentivized, right? I think that's really important. Something we will come on to in a bit is we'll come on to back to the topics of lead nurturing, and also I'd like to talk a little bit about CRM in a bit versus human beings and where the balance is. But teams reward. So you said about aligned KPIs, Tom, but you also said that they had different KPIs. So could you just sort of say how you're aligning them to get the teams working together?
Yeah, so everything everything that our marketing director Ali sets out at the beginning of the year is filtered down from the big revenue targets and big goals of revenue from industry and net new business and all of those things that we set at the beginning of the year based on the sort of wider business goals. And so everything that she sets is based on the number of MELs that we need to generate, the number of the amount of leads that we need to generate from content, all of the stuff that we know about our business, about how we get stuff done and how we produce results. She's able to understand, she's very data led, and actually the whole team is very data led, where they can take all of that information, all those metrics, start breaking stuff down by industry, looking at what we've done over the past 3, 4, 5 years, and then start figuring out how to dial up and dial down different channels that she uses and different parts of her marketing machine to be able to drive results. And then we hold each other to account on that. So that's kind of all of those KPIs are driven from that. We then also, all of the, like I said, all of the sort of the BDRs, the inside sales team, all of their numbers they're measured on opportunities opened, and then we audit those opportunities to make sure that we're not just opening loads of crap opportunities that then don't go anywhere, but numbers of opportunities opened, and those are set by the marketing team as to how many opportunities they know they need to open to be able to drive the amount of quality leads to drive the revenue. So it's kind of like, both halves are contributing to the same numbers, but equally having their own kind of, the sales team is obviously mostly metricized on revenue, marketing metricized on reach, follows, impacts, leads, those sorts of things, but both are driven from the same core.
Okay, thanks. That's useful.
I'd love to add something on that if that's possible,
Yeah,
Neil.
please,
Just
go ahead.
to build upon what Tom said there, and maybe something controversial as well that I sometimes throw out with my clients that I'm working with, is we have this expectation in lots of companies that we just pay, our salespeople get rewarded with their commission at the end when a deal is closed. But if that came from a marketing deal, we should also have a way of recompensing financially some of our marketing teams as well, because they did lots of the work up front to get that there. And then, sales, yes, of course, they had to work hard at closing it and nurturing that deal along. But actually, if we're all working together, why does only one end of the team get rewarded financially for it? Now, it works a couple of different ways. With some clients, different teams I work with, it's interesting. Sales team like the commission for themselves. Perhaps that's because that's the way they've been paid up to now. Quite a lot of the marketing teams tend to put it into a sort of a pool for like some sort of social at the end of the year, or extra team fun or whatever. But it's just another thing of thinking of that perhaps sometimes we don't consider. We think marketing, or they're paid to do the good job, but it's just another thought to put out there.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, I like the idea of marketing getting paid for what sales do. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
We also run, just to add to that, if you don't mind. So we also run, the marketing team run initiatives for the sales team. So we use Gaglamp, which is like a platform where you can just output your social, manage your social media output. And I mean, like gone are the days of like salesperson's job to pick up a phone someone, close a deal, pat each other on the back. Marketing team is just focus on brand and content and events. And actually, our sales team is our marketing team. Like, they're all connected to 2,000 people on LinkedIn. The strongest, most credible channel that we have is through someone that's connected to other people. And so being able to output all of that, crafted messaging, and them to tweak it and then post it themselves is one of our strongest sources of brand awareness, but also inbound. And our marketing team in turn is our sales team. They're the ones who are reaching people for the first time. They're taking them through a buying process, and then even at times, transacting with them through an e-commerce platform or through the website or whatever. So they're doing the closing of deals. Marketing is sales, sales is marketing. And so, yeah, the marketing team, on that same vein, we incentivize the sales team to do stuff, to post more, to get more output. We have a leaderboard of who's reached the most followers, or who's received the most likes, that sort of thing. So trying to make sure that we both sides are feeding each other with success.
No, I really like that. It's one of the perpetual challenges is to get people to amplify the company's sort of social engagement. Something I forgot to mention to everybody watching, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask questions. I see we've got one question now. We will leave some time at the end to make sure we can cover questions. I don't know if any of the panelists would like to field the question here. If you've seen it.
Yeah, definitely. I saw that. Yeah, I can read it. I've got it up actually. It says, the question is, when a sales team member doesn't value the role of marketing, how would you deal with this? And I think this is something we see all the time, because typically my organization have started with the sales team before being introduced to the rest of the company. And I don't know a sales team out there that doesn't say, we'd be better if only marketing were more efficient at their job. That's just their default, no matter how closely they work. And I think the first thing is it an individual sales team member, or is it the sales team? Because if it's a sales team, you've got a larger culture issue there that you need to adjust and look at it. If it's just one individual, then slightly linked to the thing I said earlier about expanding the vocabulary of how we give feedback, I teach people not to allow any excuses, because, marketing aren't very good, I prefer to go and get my own leads. It's just an excuse. Like, we're just projecting onto something else. So, that's fine. But I say, wouldn't it be great if marketing are doing their job? They're just making your job as a salesperson easier. They're giving you warm leads that you just have to contact. So it's a little bit about talking them through why they don't value it. And also, hey, if they're a hunter, if they just want to go out there and sell stuff, that's fine, but perhaps then they don't get included on the marketing lead roster if they're not going to do anything with it. But again, I want to look at, is it the individual or is it the team is probably the first thing. And I'm sure some of the other, but I can be quiet for a second now.
I mean, I would say definitely it's about making sure that communication's there. You know, as I said before, we'd had a co-working day. The most recent one we had was about a month ago, I think. And our marketing communications manager came and presented the marketing plan for the year. You know, took them through what the changes have been to the website and so on. And you could see everybody kind of going, oh, you know, and it's just about letting them know and understanding what the value is of what's being done. And also, you know, them making sure they pay attention to LinkedIn and watching what's going out and just really, you know, they're not going to be spoon-fed this stuff, you know, that they do need to sort of seek out this information. And if they can seek it out, and if they care enough about it, then they will learn that there is a great deal of activity that's going on to their benefit, really. So I think it's about our responsibility and our roles to make sure that communication is open and that information is being shared, because that's inevitably that's why they're not being valued, really, is because they just don't know, they can't see it, or they haven't bothered looking for it.
Yeah, it's hard to comment on specifics, but I would say that, you know, at first you have to look at, have you cultivated an environment in which you've broken down those barriers? The first thing that I was saying, you know, do they understand what each other are doing and where they're trying to add value, and have you created an environment where there's a feedback loop that's positive, not positive, but rich and free flowing, and that people feel safe to give feedback in whatever mechanism you put in place? I think secondly, it's then, do you have the leadership in your sales team to be able to address somebody who may either have like a genuine feedback they need to give and perhaps don't feel comfortable, or are giving it back in the wrong way, or that's, you know, perhaps problematic? And then the third thing, if both those things are true, if you've created a good environment for feedback, positivity, and breaking down those barriers, you've got strong leadership in your team, it might just be a difficult person, in which case you need to decide what to do. Because for us, you know, it's that sort of toxicity, sort of public, outspoken, you know, negativity about other team members, or other, you know, unwarranted about other team members or other teams, doesn't last long. So, yeah. Yeah,
it does seem to be. It feels like it would be an education issue, but yeah, it would be concerning if that was a deep cultural issue across a wider team. Culture is hard to shift, obviously. So all the dialogue so far has been really good, and it's been very orientated around people, naturally, when we're talking about sales and marketing teams. But of course, you know, I'm sure most of us have got CRM implementations, and to what extent does a good CRM implementation, is it a magic bullet to solve this, so we have to worry less about the human interactions, or what's the balance there? I don't know if anybody wants to chip in before I pick on you.
I can comment maybe. So,
okay.
You know, for me, it's the foundation for everything that we do, but nothing happens nothing ultimately happens or, you know, comes to a close inside of a CRM. You need to layer that up with good people doing the right things within the right framework and everything else. But it's the foundation for everything that we do, and have, you know, we use Salesforce and we use Pardot, and both are obviously very closely intertwined. So that makes it easy for us to be able to sort of have, you know, two halves of that. Everything starts in Pardot and then exists in Salesforce, and everything goes in Salesforce. We track everything in there. Emails, calls get tracked, activities. We now have CPQ for doing all of our quoting and management, who's incentivized to turn things around quickly and convert those leads. And then obviously you need a skilled sales team to take that through to a close. So it is the foundation for everything for us, and everything exists in that platform. But it's nothing without the people that we have driving it, using it, and then you know, making the most of it.
Excellent.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, we're on a similar journey. We also use Salesforce, and we're currently implementing Pardot, so it might be tapping you for some tips and hints and things, Tom. But you know, it's nothing without the people, is it? You know, the one thing I would say about Salesforce is it gives us it gives us scalability, it gives us good metrics, it sets alerts, you know, it can really sort of be an extra person, really, if you like, for keeping track on everything. But one excellent thing that it does do, of course, is give management and the board some really great metrics, some really good reporting that enables us to see how the business is performing, you know, in a wider sense. You know, what does the pipeline look like a year out? You know, what kind of, you know, which sectors are looking most buoyant, you know, which regions, you know, at what stage are all the leads, you know, we got lots that's just sitting at 30%, or we're really close to closing loads of stuff. And it helps us make decisions for the whole business. So it's an invaluable tool for us. Whether or not it solves everything, I don't think it does. But as Tom said, it's the foundation, and we couldn't do what we do without it. It's undoubtedly an overhead to some of the sales guys having to keep it up to date all the time, but you know, it's absolutely invaluable to us now. We wouldn't manage without it.
Yeah, I was going to chip in and say, yeah, I don't think it's ever a silver bullet, and the strength of the CRM, I guess, relies on two things. One, that we're measuring the right things. So typically we would talk about what are those leading, what are those lagging indicators, because yes, typically in this sort of marketing to sales journey, we want to you know, be measuring deals closed, and yes, that's important. But if our sales cycles are 2 years long, what are the other stuff in betweens? We heard from, you know, Tom about opportunities created, but also to make sure marketing, when they have to fill in a lead, have the same metrics they're putting in there aligned with sales. Because too often you look at it and they're covering off two different things, which is why it sort of starts not quite on the same page. So one is the CRM setup so that we're measuring the things that are useful for each of our businesses, and there's obviously a level of customization. And I do feel the need to say at this point, other CRMs are available apart from Salesforce, and they're all as good or as bad as we use them. Because the second thing is, and Alison picked up on it there, it's only as useful as the data we put into it. Again, I work a lot with sales teams, and I have not met a sales professional yet that says, one of my top parts of my job is filling in my CRM. I really enjoy it. It's very useful to me, and it really adds a lot. But they don't need to like it. They just have to do it on both sides of it. They just have to fill it in and understand that it's important. And if they don't, there are consequences, because, you know, as Alison says, we're making decisions on the data in here. So it's only as good as what we're measuring and the data that's put into it.
Absolutely. And we're all going for that utopian 100% accurate sales forecast that never ever happens. So, and then we all do that at each other. So,
I mean, the fact is you might hit the number, but it won't be in the way that you expected to, that's for sure. So
yeah, never in the way you got expected to get there. Yeah, I think. There's another question, and I like the fact it's qualified by asking for a friend. Does anybody want to pick up on that job swap idea from Andrew?
I mean, I think it would be really interesting. I'm always fascinated to learn how other companies do essentially the same thing. So it would be absolutely brilliant to go and work for a day and understand how somebody else's team is structured, which roles we're talking about, you know, our sales and marketing coordinator. I'm sure, Tom, you've got different roles that we could explore. Neil, you know, I know you've got two sort of separate teams, but I mean, that would be fascinating to see how that works. You know, is marketing therefore closer to the product team in your company than it is to the sales team, for example? You know, how do these, where do we, I don't want to say draw these lines, but where are the connections strongest? Where are the threads the thickest? And that would be fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea, and I think lots of organisations often do it when they're onboarding a new team member in either of these departments, and then maybe stop at it, because I suppose the thing that gets in the way is our time, not only of us swapping roles, but then you're thinking, oh well, I'm going to lose anyone useful in that department while they're swapping over here. So I can see there's some challenges, but maybe another way round and getting a similar result is something we often do with people is get sales and marketing in two different rooms to start with, and you let the sales people come up with what's the job of marketing, and you get marketing to come up with what is the job of sales, and then you can put them together to find out, well, where is the overlap? Because they all think that everybody else should be doing everything. And it's quite interesting because then you can pick it apart. Whereas if you said, what's your job? The list is much smaller a lot of the time. We're like, we just pick 5 things, whereas somebody else, we're like, I've got 50, just take a note. And so that's another way, I guess, of getting the same result.
I really like that idea. I want to do that. I think that would be fantastic. It'd just be interesting to see the different perspectives of why everybody isn't doing what I need them to do for me.
Yes, but the important thing there is we make sure at the end we get everybody together and we actually decide what people should do, because otherwise they think, well, I've told them that's their job.
Well, maybe we'll be perfectly aligned. I don't know. So something we've touched on a couple of times, we've talked about leads, and I'd like to sort of pivot a little bit to how we nurture leads and at what point. And I think this was a question that was emailed in before we started this. It's like, what's a lead that's marketing's nurturing, and when does it become a sales opportunity, to use the Salesforce language? Where is that crossover? Is it a consistent thing, or does it vary? And I think it's quite topical for some of us that we've got a big trade show in just over a week, which is frighteningly close. And one of the issues there is we get a lot of leads from these trade shows, and to how much do they need nurturing and fostering before we start just dumping 3,000 leads across into the sales team, expect them to close all the orders? Who'd like to start with that easy question? Anneli?
Yep, I can, I suppose, and I'll start, and then I'm happy for the others to build on it. Is that if we think maybe purely old school, how it used to be, is I would say the line would be marketing were there up until someone needed to say hello, until the human interaction started. Then typically it had been passed to the sales team, so they were the ones chasing and nurturing it. And I say old school because I think that is old school nowadays, and it stops the two teams being aligned because they just go, well, it's yours, off you go. I think in reality it takes a little bit of an education piece so that marketing understand what makes the right lead to pass over to the sales team, what makes the right lead that stays with marketing that they should be nurturing. And on the other side, with sales, when they've managed to, perhaps it didn't close as they thought it did, but priorities changed with the prospect they were talking to, it's no longer something that's appropriate to be followed up as a sales lead. So it doesn't mean they're dead to us, we never want to hear from them again, but they need to go back into marketing. So how do we pass it over effectively? Because normally now salespeople, marketing, if it's gone the other way, can see that as a failure, like, oh, this one didn't close, back to you, when actually it wasn't appropriate, here's the reasons, here's what they need. And if we take the example of the trade show lots of us have got coming up, that's a great education piece. I always tell everyone manning a trade show booth, here's the perfect sort of people that's a great lead, and put on the back, when we've got their details or whatever, they're an A lead, because those are the first ones that absolutely go to sales. On the other end, here's what great, we've got the details, but they are definitely staying with marketing. Sales wouldn't need to follow these up, and this is not even a D lead, this is just a different sort of lead. This is a marketing lead, and they get followed up a different way, because when we're at a trade show, you talk to so many people, you get to the end, you don't remember who this person was. So we need to sort of qualify them at the time, and we all need a common language for that, whatever that is. So that would probably be my starter for that question, but happy to lead it to the other two now.
Yeah, I was just going to dip in with, that 2 points really. Firstly, more generally about the sales lead, the marketing lead. Is it an opportunity? Is it a lead? Is it marketing? This is where your CRM is absolutely invaluable, because those things can just fall off the edge of the planet if you're not careful. So you do need a system to capture them and make sure that they stay current, if they're not actually being nurtured as an opportunity. And that's where you can't do that without a CRM system. So, or you'd have to have a bloody good filing system. But the other point I was just going to say about the trade show thing was we had a system where we would always review. We're not a massive company, but we would always review all of the scans that we got every day at the end of either at the end of the day or early in the morning the following day. As a piece of advice, if it's at all possible, and I'm sure most of you already do this, is make sure that you review at the show daily, because it's worth an hour at the end of the day with a beer, so that stuff just doesn't get lost forever, and you do categorize and you understand what needs to be done that night. And you understand what is, as you say, Anneli, just a marketing contact effectively, rather than even a lead, So there's definitely some categorization that you can usefully do while you're there. Tempting, and I was actually, bright lights of Vegas are.
I was just going to say, the one thing we always have to say when on a trade show is, the categorization is done with the first beer afterwards, because as soon as we get to the second or third, we get very optimistic about who we should follow up with. It's that important window, beer or wine number one.
Yeah, it's something we've been wrestling with, because if we were considering the flow of what happens on the booth, somebody walks on the booth, we scan their badge, we then have the sales conversation, and it's then you work out whether they're a hot prospect or not, but you've already done the scanning. So what we're going to try this show for the first time is tell people, if you think somebody's a hot prospect, scan them again and put the extra information in, and then we'll capture that when we deduplicate the leads. So I'm expecting twice the volume of leads from the show, but we'll dedupe them. But we were just trying to think is, because we scan them before you're informed about whether the customer is actually a good lead or not. So we're going to try that and see how it works. Tom,
I was just going to add one thing on scanning. Sorry, I'm just talking all the time. Can't shut the salesperson up. But I was just going to say that I know it's old school, but one thing even now I'm still quite a big fan of is, after we've scanned their badges, if they're really hot lead, I will ask the person if they have a business card, because occasionally they've still got the ones they bought pre-pandemic that they need to use up, and they're keen to give them out to you, because then at the end of the day, nicely, I throw away all the people who weren't hot leads of their business cards, because I just want to keep the other ones, because they often have more than one contact details on them, whereas often on their badge scan they've just left one number, whereas I've got a few more ways of contacting them. So sorry, over to you.
No, that's a good tip. Tom, anything?
Yeah,
you want to add to that?
I think we don't generate tons of our annual leads from trade shows, and we've mostly, the fastest growth we've had is in the last 3 years, of which we've not done many trade shows in the last 18 months, to be fair. Most, I think for us, everything exists and goes into Pardot, and then we start tracking people, and we start trying to understand what the patterns are. So we were looking at our average sales cycles for some new technology that we brought out, and we figured that our sales cycles, looking at when stuff gets opened or that people speak to a human in, and an opportunity gets created by a BDR in Salesforce, roughly about 45 to 60 days. And we're like, wow, that's really short. Well done us, amazing job, the sales team, fantastic. But we actually found out through all of the multi-touch marketing analysis that we do on the back end through Pardot and everything else, looking at people's activity when they download content or they attend webinars or digital events, is that there's like a 6-month nurture program. And so for us, it's really important that everything goes into Pardot, and we're scoring or flagging people who've done something that we would consider, a significant buying signal. So there's obviously like, people requesting to speak to someone or request a demo. That's an easy one. But when people are visiting buying pages, or visiting multiple webinars or digital events in a certain pattern, we tend to flag those people to a salesperson, because it's probably worth, at that point, someone picking up the phone and saying, looks like you're interested in this, how about I get you in front of an expert? So it really varies. The approach is varied, and I'd say specifically on trade shows, we would scan those first. So they all go in, but we would scan those first to make sure that we cherry pick stuff that needs immediate attention. Most of the rest of it either goes into nurture, that's automated nurture from marketing automation, but it might be nurture by the BDRs who are sending out, personalized looking emails. And I know how annoying those are when we get them, but sending stuff out that's perhaps lower priority or just has a lower score, or they've not got a company name attached to them or whatever. So sort of a varied approach, I would say, but we sort of got quite good at figuring out what those buying signals are and at what point it's important for someone to speak to an expert or a human or a salesperson, or whatever it is that route should be.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Right, I see we've got another question. We'll come back to that at the Q&A at the end, but I'd just like to sort of put one more question to the panelists, which is aimed to be a little controversial, and just like to get each of your views on this. And so who owns the customer? And who'd like to go first?
I'm going to go super cheesy and say that the company owns the customer. And if the handover between the teams is as slick as it should be, then that's got to be the truth of it, hasn't it? I mean, the fact is, of course, that the customer, if they have a question, people do buy from people. Somebody had to say it in this session. People do buy from people, and actually, the customer might come back to the person that they have the closest bond to, which may well be the salesperson if they have a question or a problem. But in fact, the entire company has to take ownership of that customer, and that's one of the pieces of work we've done over the past 18 months, is to really work hard on the customer journey, and it is an ongoing process. And if that is optimized as well as it can be, then I can completely dodge answering that in a divisive way, and just say, actually, it's everybody's responsibility. And I know
I should have phrased the question differently, but I'll let
I know. But it's a bit like, so you were saying before, marketing is sales and sales is marketing. Actually, everybody's in sales, really. We've all got a duty to make sure that customer's happy right on their way through the journey, and right until they end up in support in a loop, and then they're buying again or they're upgrading their system. So I'm going to say everybody has a duty to own the customer.
I think you're
anybody from Pebble
right.
who's listening.
Maybe I'll rephrase it. If I asked the sales department what percentage would say they own the company, I think it would be a big number, but they own the customer, sorry, yeah. So anyway, Tom, do you want to maybe go next?
Yeah, I think for us, ultimately the sales team owns the relationship with the customer. They are wholly, they're a single point of escalation, and they are wholly responsible for ensuring that, or at least getting, being first line of the health of that relationship and the sort of ongoing growth or engagement of that customer. I think that ultimately for us it's salespeople. They're very nominated. We make sure people have binary territories. There's no gray areas. There's always a point of escalation if something's happening with a customer, and that means for marketing, for nurture, but also for support or for product feedback or for project support or whatever that is. There's a salesperson that's assigned to every customer or every territory or a customer within a territory, and they're wholly responsible. But I think that marketing is responsible for the health and the nurture of that relationship. So the sort of there's only a single point of contact, or one person on our side talking to a handful of people on the other side. But I think that kind of web of interaction between two businesses and the health and kind of the flow of that relationship is responsible, or marketing is responsible for that, making sure that business is engaged with our business, that we resonate, that we're giving them the right message, that we're passing the right value proposition. They understand that what we do, we're adding value in some way. So I think it's a bit of both, but I think ultimately, from what you're asking, for us, it's the sales team owns the customer. Marketing ensures the sort of richness of engagement with that customer.
Can I ask another question, Tom? So yeah. Where would you see, we hear a lot about customer success as a function within a company. If you have a customer success function, how would you see customer ownership if you bring that into play?
So interestingly for us, customer success sits in support, like what we would normally call support. So our customers are doing, very project and, show-based stuff. And so they're usually assigned a support team that's kind of managing the times when things get tricky. And so unusually that sits in support, but support, product, marketing and sales work very closely together and are all intertwined. It's not just marketing and sales. We all work closely together day to day.
Now, you see, Alison, you beat me to the punch there, because I was actually going to controversially say that actually the customer is probably owned by customer success. It's we could say it's literally in the job title there, because I think if we take a step back with who owns the customer, the challenge that we can all see other companies facing, and we've probably all got our own personal examples of when it hasn't gone to plan, is yes, the company should own the customer, but it goes wrong when essentially, someone contacts and no one gets back to them because it just sort of fell through a gap and there wasn't any clarity of actually who was supposed to do that. And everybody meant to, but just nobody ended up doing it. And I think sometimes it's the wording. So I tend to say, really, if we break down the customer journey, absolutely the company owns it, but specifically by department, that actually suspects, so to us that is unqualified prospects, so people who are just putting feelers out there, we would say they tend to be owned by marketing, because it's their job to find out what else they're looking for, nurture them along that journey. Prospects, so qualified prospects are owned to the sales team. It is their job to take someone from I have a need to here's some money, and then once we're paid, we should hand it over to a customer success team, so that they can be there nurturing that until they need to go back into the buying cycle. But again, it depends on our internal definitions of those 3 stages, and as I said, the handover between them and the feedback, so that it is all, we love it all to be smooth as anything, but occasionally we know there can be some gaps and grey areas, and I love that Tom was like, we have no grey areas, which is brilliant. It's just occasionally we know stuff falls and we're not quite sure why.
What would be the answer to your own question, Alison, out of interest?
Good point.
It's something we're looking at the moment. So that's really why I wanted to see, as I said, I'm really interested to see how other companies do it. So, there is a school of thought which would say that once the customer becomes a customer, as Anneli said, and they place the order, that the sales team then needs to be going off and finding that their job is to find new business. It's always to find business, to close sales, to get sales. And there is an argument that would say that at that point, then the next team down on the journey should be competent and confident in handling that relationship going forward as the project gets delivered, and so on and so on. In practice, there are grey areas. There absolutely are. But yes, I'm just intrigued to see where people draw the line and how people see that either customer relationship or customer success role playing in that. I'm exploring it at the moment internally.
Because also customer success is one of the new exciting teams that we're all putting in place or changing, so that we have a customer success team. It's one of the, we should have one, and it can, as Tom said there, fall into a couple of things. Customer success teams can either be a offshoot of our support team, and that's great, so when there's a problem they look after it, or our account managers, right? Let's look after them and see what else they want. And again, we have to be clear, because it's just one of these words that I see more and more company having customer success teams, and it can mean one or both or something different. And it's what do we mean by it?
I think definition is critical. And actually, you just used a term that I was about to throw in: account manager versus salesperson, right? So there's a real difference. And what I heard Tom describing definitely sounded like account management, and that's much closer to customer success. And I think it's something Grass Valley is looking at as well, Alison. So, and we're sort of seeing it's almost different with sort of different product segments. So customer success, where you've got a software-based product that sort of goes through iterative release cycles, where you want to ensure the customer is getting a good experience, but you wanted to incremental adoption of the platform, feels much more the sort of contemporary version of customer success, which is a little bit different to traditional sales of, let's say, more a hardware product where you'll sell something and they'll use it for a number of years and then you'll sell them the new version gap. So maybe there's even different models within a single organization, possibly.
Sort of almost linked to the payment model in a way.
Yeah. Well, more the release cycle of the type of product, right? Because you don't tend to get sort of incremental releases so much on a hardware product that you would on a software platform product. So
that's actually that's a really good point. I think we're looking at when we're launching a whole cloud platform and cloud services, and that model will be very different to our existing model, and the way that we handle manage customers and ensure their success will look much more like a sort of SaaS model, and more like a sort of a customer success team that sits in a commercial team, I think, than the rest of our business, which is more sort of big installations and projects around hardware and software combined.
Yeah, maybe that's different projects versus SaaS. That could be a good distinction, right? Well, I want to leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. So that's been a really good discussion. I think this session could easily be 2 or 3 hours long, not an hour. Please, anybody listening, fire some questions into the Q&A window. I'll maybe just pick up on the one that's currently sat there asking about, are we seeing more digital QR codes on business cards? Not seeing that so much myself, but I did see something I really liked, where it was you had like a business card that was a credit card, and it was an RFID thing that you just tapped on somebody's phone and you got the details, so you only ever have one card and they pick it up electronically. So I quite liked that until I saw it was like $50 a card, and then that started making it look less attractive. But That's what I've seen. I don't know if other people are QR codes or other novel forms of exchanging details, or is it just obsolete with LinkedIn?
Yeah, one of our teams has actually gone for that. We've still got, we're still old school, I guess. Because we did a rebrand, we wanted to actually see the logo on the card, and the sales team have all got the actual cards, which we're looking forward to handing out, those of us who are going to NAB. And obviously, since travel started up again, a few more of those are starting to get used. So a bit of a mix in our place, to be honest. I've stayed old school with a business card, but I'm really interested to see what's going on out in the field, certainly next week.
Yeah, just we're seeing a lot more digital QR codes, but I think it depends by industry. Like if they're a high tech software business, they've really invested in that, so that's part of their culture. If not, they've got something more old school. But I think also depends on your ability to read whatever they've got. Like if you don't have a QR reader on your stand in your booth, then I think there's going to be a multimedia way of collecting and leaving our details for a while.
Yeah. Cool.
We do all of ours in the metaverse, so you just visit us in the metaverse. No, I'm joking. We're just
just put our goggles on, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, we're just we're killing trees still, unfortunately. I'm sure we need to rethink that, but it seems, I don't even think I have any cards at the moment. I'm not sure. We'd still be focused on handing them out. I think most stuff's badge scans or LinkedIn, as you say, or emails, but yeah, still old school.
Well, the ink's going to run with all the hand sanitizer we'll be using at NAB, I think. So yeah,
that is a good thing. I was thinking that. Do people still want cards? Do you still want to take something from 100 strangers when there's a?
Yeah, will you offend a customer when you put a rubber glove on to accept their business card? Is that going to be cultural? No.
Just put it in a bucket for me, thank you.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's feeling like we're going down a rabbit hole now, and it feels like a good point to wrap up. So I'd really like to thank the panelists, and a couple of questions we got were really good as well. This has been recorded, so I think there were people that unfortunately couldn't make the diary time work, so it will be available afterwards. The other thing I've been asked to tell everybody is that there is actually an MLC members only in-person event at NAB. So we can all hand over our sanitized, soggy business cards in person in Las Vegas. So one final thank you for everybody. And I hope the audience have found this interesting. I certainly did. Thanks again.
Thank you, Neil, for sharing it.
Well, very well.
Yes, thank you very much, Neil. Great to meet you all.